Morai Rabosai, thank you for coming here tonight. Thank you for coming to support the Yeshiva Chofetz Chaim. Is that what I sound like? I can't wait to hear what I have to say. Okay, thank you. Last year, I had the privilege of hosting the Chofetz Chaim parlor meeting, and I got to speak about my personal story with the Chofetz Chaim Yeshiva, and in particular, my personal connection to the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Henoch Leibowitz and Rav Moshe Chait. But this year, tonight, I would like to address another dimension of the greatness of this yeshiva from my vantage point. And as friends, you're in my home, I'd like to speak to you candidly. As friends, let's avoid political correctness, and let's talk straight about values and why it matters. When we speak of community needs, we as a community, we tend to adopt certain party lines, and sometimes we repeat cliches to each other over and over, and sometimes we obsess about what we think is wrong with the community and what we're going to do to fix it. And many times we listen and we hear issues that sound correct at first, but sometimes on second glance, sometimes they could sound superficial to the listener. And sometimes it sounds like we're not tackling the fundamental and real organic issues of our time. It is my experience as an attorney that when I see great Rabbonim assess a problem, or great lawyers, or great doctors, I see this skill, the ability to assess a superficial wound or problem and diagnose the real root of the problem, what we call the SIBAH. I've had clients who tell me, Mr. Cohen, my problem is here. But after extensive cross-examination, I begin to learn that the problem is here. And many of the pronouncements that we hear in the community, symptoms of a more fundamental and deeper problem that lies underneath the surface. And sometimes what we say are the problems are really external manifestations of an internal disease or a malaise plaguing Klal Yisroel. I beg you, Kehillah, in advance, and I'm sharing with you my vantage point. My vantage point is that of battle, of wars, of courtrooms, of lawsuits, of injunctions, of Bais Din cases. And I get to see people not at their best. I usually get to see people at their worst. And I've seen a side of the community that's beautiful, but I've also seen the side that's less than beautiful. And I don't mean to project a sense of importance that I'm unique and that I have this perspective that no one else has, but I do see things differently, and I see things that I want to share. I have a different kind of filter in the way I look at things. I breathe a different kind of oxygen. I have a unique vantage point that I want to share with you tonight that merits discussion. What I can share with you is that I see the importance of learning Mussar and the importance that it has on Stam Yidden like me, on leaders of the community, and on Rabbonim. To me, it's as clear as day. When I learned in the Chofetz Chaim Yeshiva, it was literally hammered into my psyche that in order to function properly as a proper, upstanding Yid in the community, regardless of your station in life, whether you're a Marbitz Torah, whether you're a layman, that one has to be connected to growing in Yiddishkeit, and that portal is via learning Mussar. I saw by example great Rabbonim in the Yeshiva and the Rosh Yeshivas, how they made critical time in their day to learn Mussar and to teach it in their shmuzim and to teach it by example. I saw that this discipline of inculcating Mussar into your life wasn't an elective, it wasn't a nice thing to do, it wasn't a mere recommendation, it wasn't a sukkah decoration, it wasn't icing on a cake, but it became the critical DNA of what it means to be a Ben Torah. And today I see that discipline manifesting itself in our community, where it becomes between those who take Yiddishkeit seriously and those who unfortunately do not. And because I see life through the prism of a courtroom, I do have a vantage point where I see the wisdom of our Chachamim and the wisdom of the Rosh Yeshiva, who stressed life living according to Mussar values. I see matters that could have been avoided. I see Chil Hashems that didn't have to be. I see marriages that did not have to fail. I've seen partnerships that did not have to dissolve, and I've seen lawsuits that could have been preempted. Had everyone in the room trained themselves to think first through a Mesilas Yesharim, through a Chovos Halavavos, through a Sefer Chofetz Chaim, and through a Sefer Shmiras Haloshin, and through Das Torah, and having that connection to a Masorah. In fact, I recall learning in the Sefer Chofetz Chaim in the introduction where he speaks about these evils that can occur. And in today's day and age, everybody fails. Nobody has a monopoly on not failing. Everyone falls from grace at some point in time. We see average people falling short of a Torah lifestyle. But what's the difference? In my opinion, we see that those who are connected to learning Mussar and are always focused on growing, well, we bounce back. And we take our tshuva seriously. And we don't focus and harp on past blemishes. And we survive and we transcend and we go weiter. And we grow. And I believe this is what makes us able to properly function as a true Ben Torah in the community through the learning of Mussar. And where did I get this from? In the Yeshiva Chofetz Chaim, the Rosh Yeshivas imparted to me and to my classmates great luminaries such as the Alter of Slobodka, the Chofetz Chaim, Rabbi Shol Salanter, Rabbi Simcha Zissel, Rabbi Naftali Amsterdam. And the concepts that we learned in the yeshiva were mature, and they were demanding, and they expected maturity of personality. Concepts like Godless Ha'odam, how great we can be, Kochos HaNefesh, the power of our souls, Cheshbon HaNefesh, taking accounting of who we are, Niskatnu HaDoros, how we're less than the previous door, Das Torah, the importance of listening to the words of Torah, Negios, understanding our unique problems and biases, Amelis BaTorah. That was something that I really learned in the yeshiva, how you can't just swim through something. You got to dig into it. Lumdus, the joy of Lumdus, and the point of Anivus, and humility, and the importance of being Kovesh Yetzirah. Today, I'm very fortunate to continue the Masorah that I received in the yeshiva, and I consult regularly with Chaverim, who are Talmidim of the Rosh Yeshiva, in Los Angeles, and in no particular order. Rabbi Avram Stuhlberger, Rabbi Yitzchak Summers, Rabbi Shlomo Goldberg, Rabbi Meir May, etc. And there are others. But just mentioning these four products of the yeshiva, you can see a beautiful common tzad hashava, common thread. They all have sterling midos, derech eretz, and anivas. They know halacha, and they act with great competence. These Rabbonim are, in every sense of the word, my role models, and they are leaders in the community. And in the yeshiva of Chofetz Chaim, the Rosh Yeshivas stress the importance of learning Torah with a critical eye, to analyze and to question and to probe for answers, and not be satisfied with mediocrity and just swimming through a sugya, and to wrestle with a difficult marsha and to seek truth. Now, admittedly, at first, my brain wasn't accustomed to stretching as far as the yeshiva wanted it to stretch. In fact, I started getting headaches because my atrophied brain was dulled by teenage life, and I wasn't used to being pulled in the direction that I never in my life thought possible. I initially had a very comfortable approach to Gemara. For those of you that remember the Sensino Gemara, that was it, the precursor to the Art Scroll. That's all I really needed to know. In fact, initially I was intimidated by the high level of academic lumdus in the yeshiva. In my mind, I initially distanced myself from any of the mafarshim at the back of the Gemara, as those pirushim were the domain of the big Talmidei Chachamim and the big leagues. And who am I? I had no business getting involved. I looked for excuses not to go deep into the Gemara. But then I met a Rebbe in Chofetz Chaim in my second year of Chofetz Chaim named Rabbi David Weiner, Shlita. And Rabbi Weiner was to me like shock therapy. He hocked me a cup day and night with a very simple focus and goal. You got to reconcile a Gemara, a Rashi, and a Tosas, and a Marsha. And he said, don't get seduced by the allure of running to hundreds of commentaries until you master the basics. Rabbi David Weiner, Shlita. And Rabbi Weiner was to me like shock therapy. He hocked me a cup day and night with a very simple focus and goal. You got to reconcile a Gemara, a Rashi, and a Tosas, and a Marsha. And he said, don't get seduced by the allure of running to hundreds of commentaries until you master the basics. And his demands were simple. He wanted one word, clarity. And he said to me many, many times, if you can say it to me clearly, that means it's clear in your head. And how many times have I used that thesis in my trials? And boy, oh boy, did we battle and did we argue. And he was very patient with me. In fact, when this year started, I would comically pull out the one thing that I knew I would need for this year. I always have a prop, always. Because I used to get headaches. But because, all jokingly aside, with Rabbi Weiner, there was no squinting, there was no avoiding, there was no excuses, there was no I couldn't, and there was no letting up. And this was a Rebbe, an extraordinary Rebbe of mine. And he confronted me and didn't tolerate my laziness. And if there were indeed rocks in my head, he made sure that I purged them from my thought process. And Rabbi Weiner simply didn't give up on me, didn't let up on me, and he checkmated me for every excuse I could come up with not to confront the challenges of the sugya. And after a period of time, after fumbling and struggling and trying again, I got it. And it became addictive. And Rabbi Weiner introduced me to the world of the Ketzos HaChoshen and the Shef Shmaitza and the Kehillah Yaakov, to name a few. And it got to a point where I totally ate up the Derech HaLimud and could not get enough of it. So tonight I just wanted to express Hakaras HaTov to Rabbi Weiner and to the Yeshiva for training me and exposing me to a real mechanech and an extraordinary teacher and a principled role model. Tonight we have a guest speaker, Rabbi Yoel Burstein, who is a close personal friend and a principal of Bais Yaakov of Los Angeles. My wife Adina went to Bais Yaakov. My daughter Hindi Olav Shalom went to Bais Yaakov. My daughter Tali went to Bais Yaakov. My niece Panina is going to Bais Yaakov. And it's safe to say that our home has been influenced, our home has been enhanced, and our home has been elevated by the values of Bais Yaakov and Rabbi Burstein. It's a great comfort for us to have Rabbi Burstein say a few words about the yeshiva.